What's up, everyone? Today I've got a bit of a bone to pick, and I've got a bone to pick with washing machine companies, which I know sounds a little bit weird, but let's go over to my washing machine and I think it'll make a little bit more sense. Okay, so here's my problem. It's 2025, and for some reason I have to open this little drawer here. I have to dump the perfect amount of my laundry detergent into the drawer. I could use this stupid little cup, but then it gets all drippy. I could use this little thingy here, which is what I usually do to fill it up, but that takes forever and it's annoying. I could use the powdered stuff, but my spider arm inside of my washing machine deteriorates more quickly when I use that, apparently. Don't ask me how I know. And I guess I could use the Tide Pod things, but I don't know. I think those are more expensive. So today I'm going to see if I can do something where I combine this with this. And I feel like we should have had this already by now. It's 2025. I want to be able to dump this entire thing into my washing machine, be able to hit a couple of buttons, and have my washing machine work with the appropriate amount of detergent. So I'm going to see if a dude in his garage can figure this out. And if I can figure it out, then the washing machine companies definitely should be able to figure this out and probably do it much better than me. Let's go ahead and get started. We'll see what we can build and try to figure this thing out. Okay, so I think I should start off by listing just my requirements, things that I'm going to need. So I think step one is I'm going to need some kind of container to hold everything. I need some way to go from container to washing machine. And I need some way of controlling the transfer from one to the other. Ideally, I would like a small, medium, and large load capacity, because maybe I'm just doing a small load, or maybe I've got a bunch I'm throwing in there. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's break down what we need even more. I think to go from the container to the washing machine, some sort of pump is probably the best idea, but a pump that I'm able to control. And then as far as the controller goes, I'm kind of already imagining little buttons for these. So just 3 buttons. And then I'm going to need some sort of brain. So something like an Arduino that can say, okay, when you hit the small button, I want this much. Control the pump for however long or whatever it needs to do there. I think that's pretty much it. Well, the rest of the stuff I think we can figure out. I guess that I'd like for this whole thing to be housed in something. I'm going to say housed and safe so that it doesn't break or electricity doesn't zap somebody. Yeah, I think we can work with this. Let's start gathering a few things. Alrighty, I think I figured out step number 1. I've got a Tupperware here that has a nice crack on it. It got dropped by one of my kids or something. And so I'm thinking that I just fill in the crack with some hot glue, and this will be my container, drill a hole in it for my pump, and that should work. Alrighty, so we've got our container sorted out. I went on and hopped onto Amazon, and I picked up this pump. It's just a little 12 volt, it's called a peristaltic pump, and it gets used in things like medical supplies and fish tanks and stuff. So I believe that with a certain amount of time, it will give me a certain number of milliliters, and I think it should be pretty accurate. The one thing I'm a little worried about is that I think it's going to be kind of slow, but slow is fine. we can work around that. So I think I'm going to go ahead and call that checked off there. So we've got our pump. Now we need a way to control that pump. And I went and looked at what I've got around the house. And I've got this little ESP32 board. So I think that that will work just fine, because I should be able to control this pump through the ESP32 board. And then I grabbed a couple of buttons, so we should be good there. I've got all of that stuff already sorted out. And then I figured for this housed and safe, I'll just 3D print something. So there's our game plan. Now we just have to figure out how to put the whole thing together in a way that will actually work. And I need to figure out how to control the pump through my ESP32. Alrighty, so I think I found a solution to the controlling the pump problem, but check out how tiny these things are. Yeah, it's called a MOSFET, I guess, and it's a specific kind that should be able to take the 3 volts from my ESP32 to control the gate portion on the MOSFET and allow 9 volts to pass through it when I'm signaling with the ESP32. So with this being so small, I was planning on just soldering to it like I do with many of my projects, but I think that I'm going to have to learn a new skill because these are just tiny and I don't think I want to try soldering directly to them. So I'm going to go learn how to make a PCB. Well, I found this video from James from Fluxbench, and he told me that it's easy and I need to stop worrying. And so I actually followed along with a fair bit of this video and learned how to use Easy EDA. Okay, and after fiddling around for a little while, I now have an official schematic that I'm going to use. Basically, it's going to be my ESP32 here. And then I'm going to use a little buck converter to take my 12 volts in, and I'm going to bring that down to 5 volts so that I can power the ESP32. I've got leads to my motors with something new that I learned. This is a flyback diode that prevents the motor from frying the rest of my electronics. Good to know. And then here I've got my MOSFET that is being controlled through my ESP32, a couple of resistors to ground, and then my 3 buttons. So that's basically what it looks like as far as the schematic goes. And then let's take a look at the PCB itself. And this is kind of what we got. So wasn't actually too bad, but I definitely cheated and made it easy for myself. I mostly just put holes in places where I wanted to attach previously made boards. So something I might do in the future is actually design out the ESP32 board and include it in the PCB itself. But this time I went for easy mode. Alrighty, so my PCBs have arrived and this is what they look like. I had to buy 5. They require you to at least buy 5, but maybe if I blow something up, then I will have extras, which I suppose is a good thing. But there we go. Now we should be ready to kind of start designing things and then go from there. I guess I mean designing the things physically. Alrighty, so this is the design that I ended up coming up with. So we'll have our buttons. You can kind of see those there, small, medium, and large. I designed to have just a little cord that kind of goes with my power supply. Circuit board itself, I kind of just threw some dots in there to tell me these are the ones for my buttons, these are my power supply and pump ones, just to try to situate where I want to put things. And then I've got my pump here with stuff to kind of hold it in place. The tubes will come out the bottom, and there will be a tube that goes out the back that connects to my container, and then a tube that comes out the front so that I can then pass it through to my washing machine. And then I've got a little kind of like tube holder for when I'm not having it be placed ready for the washing machine, essentially. So that's kind of the design, and then I'll just have a little cover that goes over the top of it. So I'll get that 3D printed out and we'll go from there. So I'm here with Navy and we're doing just a little bit of a quick check. We're just about ready for assembly, but I wanted to make sure that the orientation that I have my motor, which will be, or I guess the pump, the orientation of the pump will be to pull the fluid from this line and push it out of this line. And so I've got some wires and things, some water, and we're just going to check that real quick. And then we'll know that we have everything sorted out, and then we'll go from there. So let's see that we have everything right before we assemble it. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Alrighty, and now we've got negative to our negative, and positive to our positive, and yeah. So you can see that we've got bubbles coming out this side and we want it reversed. So when I wire this up, I'm going to wire it up backwards so that my positive is on the negative of the pump and the negative is on the positive of the pump, which will shift the direction. And then we will get the water or the detergent flow going in the right direction. So glad that we checked this because we do need to reverse those on the actual build. So as far as the putting everything together goes, I started off with this little power chip that lets me take the 12 volts down to the 5 volts. I figured this was the most important beginning stage. I wanted to make sure I had power to all of the correct places. So I went ahead and soldered this up. I should have put some pins through there to make it a little easier, but it did work in the end. It was stuck on there pretty good. So after I got that in there, I soldered up the wires for my power supply, and that went pretty well, nice and easy. And then I plugged everything in and gave it a check. Made sure I had 12 volts to the pump, made sure I had 5 volts to my ESP32. Once that checked out, I moved on to the MOSFET, which you can see is just tiny there. I had to use tweezers to get it in the right place. My head does get in the way here, but honestly, with how small that was, I needed to get up close and see, so I don't feel too bad about it. And then once I finished that, we moved on to the resistors. These were quite easy. I just poked the little wire portion through and soldered them on, clipped them off, and pretty easy. Then I moved on to the actual ESP32 board. I added a liberal amount of flux before I started soldering up the pieces there. I did find that using lots of flux and a little bit of solder was the best sort of situation, the best way of doing this. It made it go pretty quickly once I figured that out. I then moved on to my flyback diode. This was also kind of small and tedious, but we got there in the end. And then we moved on to the pump. Just got the wires hooked up to the pump itself and then over to the board. Not too bad. With that done, I just made sure everything would reach so that it could plug everything in appropriately. And then we moved on to the buttons. Buttons were pretty easy, just kind of putting wires onto each one, and then I'd thread them through there, thread this little nut on, and screw that on. So, and then I just had to take each of my wires from my buttons and make sure that they got soldered to the right places. The only thing that was different was the ground. I combined them together, and then I soldered them onto the board. So, not too bad, just they didn't need each of their own spots. So I just put them into place. And then after that, we kind of shoved everything inside. And then I'm gonna screw in the motor here. With the motor screwed in, everything would stay stable, and then I moved on to the tubes. Got the back tube and then the front tube. That was a little bit tedious, but overall not too bad. And then I hot glued my power plug in place, and then hot glued my container where all the cracks were so that we wouldn't run into issues with it leaking, which, plot twist, off camera it totally did, and I had to come up with a solution to fix that. But drilled the holes in to that container, got it hot glued in place, and then I hot glued the tube to the bottom to make sure that it would do what we wanted it to there. Then I quickly drilled this little weep hole so that I could not create a suction in the container when the pump goes. With that done, we're ready to put it all together, but first we need to actually code this whole thing up. First, I've just included this library that helps make sure that my buttons don't accidentally double click. And then I have my pins that I've defined, with the gate pin being the one that controls my MOSFET and allowing the pump to actually operate. And then I have my small, medium, and large pins. And then I've created different durations for those based off of the testing that we did. This section here is just the debouncers with this library here. Like I said, same reason, trying to make sure that we do not cause double clicks on the buttons. And then I have a pump start time, a duration, and is the pump running or is it not? And then we have our setup, which just defines a lot of things like the gate pin is output. We're going to say that we want it to start off, right? And then we're going to attach all of our buttons to the input pull-ups so that we can click them and have them work, and then attach each of them to button debouncers that we had before. And then we're assigning an interval. So we're saying, hey, if you get a button click, you got to wait at least 25 milliseconds before you're allowed to register another button click. And then we start looping through. We update each of the buttons, and then if the pump is not running, then we will check to see if any of these buttons were pressed, and then start the pump with the assigned different durations. And then if the pump is running, then we're going to check to see, should we stop the pump? Have we hit that pump duration time? And then here's, you can see the start pump code, and as well as the stop pump code. So in there, just basically updating the times and the gate pin so that the pump is actually running. So there's the code for you. Alrighty, time to take a look at the finished product here. So there we have it. I just filled it up with laundry detergent. As you can see, I haven't even used it at all once. So we're gonna plug this bad boy in and see how it works. And once again, I just wanted to say that if I could make this, and I have no formal education in anything electronics or engineering or anything, if I could do this, what I really, really want is for this to somehow go inside of our laundry machines. And I believe that if I can accomplish this, then those engineers at these companies should be able to accomplish the detergent storage goes within the machine itself, and we put a little pump in there and we get the right amount. So that's what I'm really wanting from this whole project. So let's see how it works. Basically, I'll just pull open my my drawer here, drop that in, and I'm going to do the small one just to kind of get the initial fluid into there, and then we'll do like the medium one so we can see this in action. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. Looks like it's doing its job. We got a little bit in there. And then once that's all done, the idea is just to kind of leave it like that. I was really hoping that little hook there would do more for holding that tube, but yeah, that didn't work so well. It's doing enough, but it's not fantastic. So now we'll hit our medium load button and we'll let it do its thing. You can see that filling itself up with the appropriate amount of detergent. It does take it a second. So that should be about 20 seconds that it takes to occur, which won't bother me at all. I'll just start loading it up while that 20 seconds is going. And then I will set that tube back there and we're good to go. So hopefully you enjoyed the video and hopefully you agree with me that this laundry detergent container and pump should all go within our laundry machines. And if you feel the same way, please share this with somebody and hopefully, well, share this with somebody who's an engineer at one of these companies, and then we can actually make this happen. And that's the dream, that's the goal. So I guess for now I'm going to go try to find some laundry that actually needs to get washed so that I can use this detergent that I just poured in here. So thanks for watching.